Good morning, everyone. My name is Bart Kamp. Those that don't know me, very few, but I've been a member of DPUK since 2014, something like that, and been presenting left, right, and center sometimes when I feel like it, when I'm in the mood. Today, I'm not in the mood at all, so it's going to be a serious problematic session.
More coffee.
No, I don't. I quit coffee 16 years ago. I was gonna. A month ago, I was hit by an infection while I was in Frankfurt, flying back to London, and I ended up being in a hospital for about 8-10 days. Came out, and a week later, the infection came back, and that was just about at the same time when I was about to put my presentation together. Not a chance in hell that I felt like putting anything together. I was like, forget JFK, forget all that shooting, forget all that blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, I found something where I just went, oh my goodness, this is so strong. I'm going to put the whole fingerprint malarkey to the side and I'm going to focus on this. Only to find out that I was heavily affected by that infection and the fight of the antibiotics in my system. Then I looked into the wrong corner. That's what it will come down to. And I put a presentation together for about 20 slides already. And I was like, yes, it's going to rock. I'm going to nail everything and everyone to the cross with this finding. And of course, then I looked later on Saturday afternoon. I was like, you arsehole, you completely polished that and just basically touched it. So back to the fingerprints again. The fingerprints is part of is something that I've worked on over a period of years, 5-6 years, and then worked on it for say a few months, and then back in the box for 2 years, and then read up a little bit more and basically add things on. And of course, it's not just the fingerprints, but it's also the palm prints and also the nitrate tests. And one of the first things I didn't do it for my papers back in 22 when I released them, and it wasn't part of the interrogations chapter that I wrote about until Malcolm said to me, you should do a book. And then basically I was like, oh gosh, now I've got to try and find some bits that stick together even more than it already was, because at that time in 22 there were 4 chapters, and for the book I ended up turning the 4 chapters into 3. And I just said to myself, well, if you're going to do all this and you're doing a lot of chronological stuff, you may as well look into the fingerprints and what happened actually between the papers from May 22 till the release of the book, which was July 23, was that by researching not just the fingerprints and the palm prints and the nitrate test, but I also dug more into the Heidel ID and so forth. And I basically made the bold statement that in my book where I said, well, they didn't have anything on Oswald to allegedly tie him to the rifle and to the murder of the president at that time. The next morning, on the 23rd, when they find the bill of sales at Klein's at 7:30 in the morning by A. Heidel, that's when the connectivity starts to gain traction and basically they start putting things together. But on the 22nd, they didn't have anything. And part of that is to do with the fingerprints. We go to the next slide, please. Yeah. Well, so we have the fingerprint. I'm talking about this in 3 sections: the fingerprints, the palm prints, and the nitrate tests. So what happens is that in the corridor of the 3rd floor of the Dallas Police, there's a bit of a dog and pony show going on. There are 3 detectives. Oh, sorry. 1 captain, 1 detective, and 1 sergeant who come out taking their turns with coming out with evidence. Next slide, please. Now, the first one is Captain George Max Doughty, and he shows us the fingerprints. And this was something that I really had to sink my teeth into. And the reason for that was that because of the pictures, if you look at these this is in a 5x2 formation, starting at the top left with the thumb, and then index finger and so forth, and the same with the bottom, with the right hand. He is showing the cards. So at that point, I was like, okay, fingerprints, cards. These cards have all square outlines, all little squares. So basically, depending on where you put the finger in there, you can see the position of the ink print as such. So I went, okay, now I can see on this and this, and also that one, that the tip of that finger is exceeding the horizontal line of that actual fingerprint card. So I was like, that's a point of recognition. I know where it's at. So where can I find these fingerprint cards? Now that turned to be a mission and a half. And for that, I needed to investigate a bit further. Next slide, please. Oh, that one looks dodgy. But that's another one where basically the fingerprint cards are being held. Now then, we're getting to the next slide, please. Is that the video?
That's the video.
Okay, so then there's a heartbreaking moment happening because I see these pictures and the guy's Doughty's holding those cards up, and I go, oh, fingerprint set card. Okay, I need to look for one set. But when the video is playing, this is a video that Dennis Morissette posted a while back.
Do you want to play it?
Yeah.
Amid 30 years of accusations that the police had planted the palm print on the rifle, the latent fingerprints on the trigger guard have been largely ignored.
Okay, so basically he gets it and he gets a second card out. But the second card goes away from the camera. So I'm dropping down to my knees and start throwing shit like there's no tomorrow. All right, no. I don't have any images of this damn car. But then as luck would have, inside Uncle Malcolm's archives, in a folder full with newspaper clippings and God knows what else. Next slide, please. That one. There you go. Out it comes. Bada bing. I was like, awesome. I've got now 2 sets of fingerprint cards. I can see which one's which, and now I can start looking for it. Well, that turns into a massive issue. Because when you look at the University of North Texas, they have all the fingerprint cards on file. They have no originals of these particular cards on file at all. All they have are 5x4 reproductions, photographic reproductions of these cards, but they don't have the original stuff at all. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe we'll need to find out where they are, where they could have been, and so forth. So can I have the next slide, please? That's another one. Again, here, see that tip here over the edge. All right, next one, please. Okay, so then I start basically comparing and start looking at things and trying to find which is where, and so forth. And I can't find them. And then I realized that, of course, the FBI came. Next slide, please. Can you pass that one? Next. Yeah. These are, hold on, go on back, please. This later. So I go and I find out that the FBI collected the evidence. Everybody knows that they collected the rifle in the middle of the night. Now, if you want to be really, really pedantic, I can say that the time that is being given for Vincent Drain to collect all the evidence is set at 11:45, and everybody's written that down like it's gospel, but it's complete bullshit. I'll tell you that in a second why that is, and it's really simple to explain. So we get to, let me just double check this, sorry. Wrong, done. Wrong again. Good, next slide, please. At the same time, they are making ink-free pads, ink-free fingerprints. These ink-free fingerprints are made by J.B. Hicks, which you can see in the initials. He also filled in Lee Harvey Oswald's name. Oswald would not sign any of the fingerprint cards that were presented to him. This is around 9 o'clock in the evening. This is happening. And at the same time, this book, I forgot the title, with Rusty Livingston and
Rusty evidence.
That's it. That's one of the worst books ever.
He's not gonna say copy it.
Yes.
What a
That's an
salesman.
absolute terrible book. FBI standard is that you need to have 10 to 12 or maybe even 15 points of identification for a fingerprint to match. In that book, they talk about 3 is enough to point out that that's Oswald. Anywhere else, you would need 10 to 12 points of identification. But in that book, apparently 3 is plenty. Also, this is a brilliant example of evidence pilfering, because these are the only ones known to the archives and storage and so forth for inkless fingerprints. This set doesn't even come close. I can see it already just by looking at J.B. Hicks, which is here under the S's, and here it starts under the F. So this is a total different set. This is a set that only came out when that book was released, and somebody of the DPD took that with him as a souvenir, obviously. No different than the backyard photos and things like that. You know, it happens. But this is nowhere else to be seen in any archive. All right. I don't know what the next slide is. Can I see the slides on the left so I can know what's next? I'll just bundle this together, right? Otherwise tough.
Do it this way.
The corner doesn't want to let me log in for some stupid reason. Realize it. Right, now we're talking. Okay, now the next slide is the press conference. Now, Vincent Rain, right here.
Excuse me, Bart, would you mind just standing
All
aside? Thanks.
Vincent Rain, right to the left of Henry Wade. Yeah, right there where the mouse is. Now, what's so significant about this is that at 11:45, he apparently picked up Oswald's shirt, the rifle, the fingerprints, and so forth, the whole enchilada to take it back. That was a bit difficult because, first of all, Oswald had his press conference after 12, roughly 10, 15 minutes after midnight, very early on the 23rd. That's one thing. Wade does an impromptu press conference after Oswald. So while Oswald's upstairs and hands up over his shirt and gets his picture taken in a white t-shirt, those mug shots are done at that point. His prints are gone at that point. So the DPD doesn't have any palm prints or any fingerprints at all in their possession at this point. So what do? Next slide, please. They have Lieutenant Knight take prints of Oswald, again, 2 sets, fingerprints, 2 sets of palm prints in the middle of the night. So we have, you know what, you've spoken about the chain of evidence of the pistol and the rifle and the this and the that. This is no different. It's a mockery of the whole process. They gave everything away to the feds, and it may have only been for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour, but there is a dead period in between that they couldn't nail him with the fingerprints at all. The problem with the fingerprints goes further, because I'll go a little bit more in depth with Carl Day. But that is already the first problem that I found out after seeing the images on the cards and compared that with them and only found them back into Warren Commission exhibits only. But the problem gets bigger because during the HSCA, and this came out in 2017, but Malcolm already had it sooner than that, was the fact that 2017, a document of the HSCA was released, where they basically said that they couldn't find the fingerprints of Oswald. They were gone. They couldn't find them. Now, the one you see above is basically kept in the Dallas archives. If you go to the University of North Texas, you will find the original, because you can see it's in ballpen basically written down. Whereas the other ones are photocopies, you can see it's always in black. And this then basically creates a situation with the FBI. They cannot find fingerprints. And it takes them, there's a 15-year gap between 1963 and 78, where a clerk, by accident, Remember that document you sent me? A clerk by accident finds the fingerprints, one set of them at least, and goes, yeah, we've finally found a set of fingerprints. You think something of such a magnitude would be relatively easy to find in one of their archives? Well, they just lost and then refound as such. All right. That's what we got. Oh yeah, bring on Carl Day. Next slide, please. So Carl Day is a pivotal person, not just with the fingerprints, but also with the palm prints. What we know about Carl Day is that he was very good at what he was doing, being a fingerprint expert, and he had trouble getting fingerprints off that rifle. The best he could get were smudgy fingerprints near the trigger guard, but they were useless, utterly useless. And then it's quiet. There is no mention of a palm print whatsoever. Nothing. It is only afterwards, after the rifle is being taken in by the feds, that very same night of the early morning of the 23rd, is that there's no mention of a palm print whatsoever. What happens is that the FBI gets this rifle and basically tears it a complete new one. They take it apart, they photograph it from any angle possible. They use different lighting, and for that we have to thank Sebastian Latona. I wish I had a picture. I looked for it, but I couldn't find it. Next slide, please. And we cannot find, and he cannot find anything. Now they take that whole thing apart, and this is something I'm going to look for when my request for the archives in the next few weeks. I'm trying to find out the photographs that were taken off the rifle by the FBI, if we can get hold of them. But you know what? There's got to be a set forensic photographs of the rifle showing the details and such. The weapon itself, the metal is too rough for anything to stick on. Yeah, the wood doesn't help. There's a lot of things basically that go against the fact of getting actually a clear print of this particular rifle. Now, Carl Day makes this big song and dance while he's told by Fritz basically to go down. You go next slide, please. And he has to bring that down to Marina Oswald. Can you just go one further, please? Now, in this, these are two shots of inside room 317. And he's basically there to show the rifle to Marina and whether Marina recognized it or not. Had Marina recognized that rifle, they would have had a Texas barbecue about half an hour later with Oswald on it. Okay, simple as that. If he had said like, oh yeah, that's the rifle Lee had, blah, 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 that would have been something that they could stick to him, and they did. Will Fritz didn't. Marina did not recognize that rifle as such. All right, next one, please. Where are we at? Okay, then we get this document, and this was interesting because I was like, oh, this is made by Nat E. Pinkston. He's probably my least favorite FBI agent I've ever come across because he's, well, he crawled underneath Marina's house to bug her. Those tapes came out a week ago, by the way. And he also is responsible for the creation of the second floor lunchroom encounter. He basically was ordered by upstairs to go into the Texas Google Depository and get a report together with Truly. And in that report with Truly, he mentions the sighting of rifles inside the building, which is one of the first things that Oswald said in his first interrogation. So he gets this document ready, and where they basically are stating that he didn't have the time to take the lift of the rifle. And this is being repeated quite a few times. So Day has this rifle. He puts it in lockup inside in his office. Then he takes it out. Then he shows it to the world. Yeah. Then he goes back again. Then he has to take the lift off and photograph it. Then he goes back down to talk to Curry. Then he talks to Fritz. They all tell him to stop working on it. Don't do anything. Yeah, but I was in the middle of lifting it, blah, 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 whatever excuse you want to come up with. Because if you have something, pure evidence, no one's going to tell you to stop. And he just stops doing anything about it. He forgets to mention, to Vincent's brain that there's something underneath. Can you go one back, please? One more. Yeah. Where his hand is, and to the right of that path, that there is a palm print underneath. And he doesn't make any mention of that to Drain. And Drain and Carl Day both get interviewed by Henry Hurd in 1984. And they're like polar opposites. Day swears that it's done. If we go to the next, go a few slides ahead. Yeah, no, next one. Oh no, that's too far. Sorry,
Okay.
I messed up the sequence. You'll have to go to slide 24. The one with full text. Yeah, that one. So, this is the Warren Commission testimony of Carl Day. I'll read it out for those that have trouble reading it. I took it to the office and tried to bring out the 2 prints I'd seen on the side of the gun at the bookstore. They still were rather unclear. Due to the roughness of the metal, I photographed them rather than tried to lift them. I could also see a trace of a print on the side of the barrel that extended under the woodstock. I started to take the woodstock off and noted traces of a palm print near the firing end of the barrel, about 3 inches under the woodstock, when I took the woodstock loose. On the bottom side of the barrel, which was covered by the wood, I found traces of a palm print. I dusted these and tried lifting them. The prints were scotch taped in the usual manner. A faint palm print came off. I could still see traces, of the print under the barrel. I was going to try to use photography to bring out a better print. About this time, I'll make it easier for me. About this time, I received instructions from the chief's office to go no further with the processing. It was to be released to the FBI for them to complete. Later on, what happened to that bit? Later on, Day admits photographing the rifle again. He had another chance to photograph the rifle, but did not bother about that all-important lift. So he had 2 opportunities to photograph that particular palm print. And that's negligent, whatever. It's just like looking for excuses, because if you have something that vital right in front of you, then you say, yeah, okay, I will, but I'm going to do this. And by the way, how much time does it take to take an image of something like that? 15, 20 minutes, if you're really taking your time with your lights and so forth. It's not that long. Right. On the next slide, then when Day is actually questioned by the Warren Commission, Day will not perjure himself, and he will not confirm that particular palm print is Lee Harvey Oswald's palm print. He will not do a dead cert and say, hey, this is what it is. Yeah, this is exactly the same one that I did. None of it. They will not confirm for 100% that C637 is Lee Oswald's palm print without checking it first. And when he's asked later during the same testimony about it again, Day states, the palm print on the box he apparently sat on, I can definitely say it is his without being in fear of any error. The other, I think it is his, but I couldn't say definitely on a witness stand. In a September 9th interview with the FBI, he states that after the palm print list, he only told Jesse Curry and Will Fritz about it that evening. He was not able to state the exact time of the discovery, nor when he relayed the result to Curry and Fritz. He only knows it's prior Vincent Drain's collection of the evidence. Yet Curry is asked about the fingerprints that same evening, and Will Fritz early on the 23rd, and both answered in the negative. They didn't have anything. When they were questioned by the press and saying, right, what's happening with the fingerprints and with the palm print, they have absolutely nothing to say. We don't have any news yet. They don't have the news. Some people were talking to the press and saying that, for instance, with the nitrate test, that it was positive on his cheek. Curry did that in the evening of the 22nd. And there was no evidence because the results didn't come back until the 23rd. And this is how it goes on and on and on. Can I see the next slide, please? Yeah, there's Dave with the gun. So, all right, and one more, please. Okay, oh yeah, this is cool. So this is also, once again, about whether, when is he told So during the same HCA interview, Day states that only after his return to the fourth floor does he discover part of the print on the metal bit underneath the barrel where it sits on the stock. Wilfrids tells him twice to stop, as the FBI is taking a rifle with them. There's no mention of Curry saying it like, because he mentioned that himself. So that would have been two people to tell him to stop. He did not give the FBI the print lift, as he thought the FBI would do a better job. And they would, because they didn't find anything. And there was nothing. So they did a better job. Now, what happens next is that the rifle's gone for about 24 hours. The rifle comes back on the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. And then it's in the possession of the DPD for about 4 or 5 days. I think until the 29th, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, you're nodding, so I presume I'm right. So, and then comes back. But in that period of time, we know that law enforcement officials, now I want you to go back to Paul Grudy slide, so which is in the beginning. The one with the green boxes.
This one?
Number 17. Yeah. So that's when you get to Paul Grudy. And Paul Grudy was the Undertaker. And he's being interviewed in The Men Who Killed Kennedy. But he's also interviewed for the HSCA. Thanks to you, I thought that. That was very hard to get. And Grudy starts talking about people that went in at night and take fingerprints of Oswald. And they were basically a bit miffed because they had to clean all his fingers off because they came in, of course, with ink pads. And the thing is, with dead people or with people that are alive, you do a rolling motion of a fingerprint when you take fingerprints. When you have rigor mortis, that's not possible unless you want to turn over the entire corpse, because you just have like one stiff arm. So what they then do is basically tap the sides and take it, and then have like underneath, left and right. These sides are basically done as such. And there are fingerprints available from the 25th on Oswald. The question is, who did them? Grudy isn't really forthcoming. He calls them maybe Secret Service, maybe FBI, but I say it was DPD, because who else would have walk in there in the middle of the night and have these things? Grudy, in his interview as well, is cagey about actually telling who actually went in there to do that. And on top of that, this is also for me the key moment where they get Oswald's fingerprints and basically put that palm print on the barrel. That's my thing. There's one thing in the Oliver Stone film I agree with, and that's that scene where Oswald's lying dead in the coffin, and they go there and grab the barrel and basically just put the fingerprints underneath, that palm print underneath the barrel as such, because they didn't have it. Because this is the thing, when the FBI gets hold of the rifle, they gave it to the first and foremost fingerprint expert, Sebastian Ortono, and they take the whole thing apart. They take pictures of every angle, like I said already, and they find nothing. They cannot find anything. And as a matter of fact, this Warren Commission testimony is devastating to the whole fingerprint find and the palm print find on that rifle as such. Like, all we had was smudged stuff, and the rest of it was absolutely useless. There was nothing on there. And when you think like, well, you know what? DPD might have a half decent lab to look at things and powder and this, that, and the other. But then I look at the FBI, and they're forensically much more advanced than any of the other guys. So, and when they come back with a report and say, we found nothing, and then all of a sudden the rifle goes back, and 5 days later, it goes back to the FBI and go, oh, by the way, we've got this print on the bottom of the. So how's that happening? You've got the first and foremost fingerprint expert looking at this thing, taking it apart and not finding anything. Then it goes back to the DPD, and the DPD sends it back to the FBI, and lo and behold, hallelujah, there is the palm print straight underneath. Boom, job done. And this is how it gets creased out. They get rid of all the creases with the FBI in the days following that. This is all around the 29th. So this is already a week after it all happened. So stop playing with that gun. So that brings me to the palm prints. Few more. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, there you are. Nice. Next one, please. These also done by J.B. Hicks. That's Hicks right there. You can see the palm print right in his left hand. That's Pete Barnes. And if you're really, really, really desperate, like me, I am, that's F.A. Turner. That's Richard Sims, the most forgettable Dallas police detective you could come up with. Unbelievable. I don't recall. I have absolutely no idea. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, Jim Lavelle was bad, but this guy took the crown without a doubt. And the guy on the left, I don't know if you think he's a federal guy, but he's been mistaken for being Roger Craig, which he isn't. There's a different shot of him, also shot through the window, because this is shot through the window of 317, robbery and homicide. And this guy has also been seen and shot on the right-hand side where there's a table. You can see the typewriters here. And he's standing around that table, and everybody thought it was Roger Craig, but it's not him. All right, next one, please. So this is Johnny Hicks, and Johnny was the guy who shot, who signed all the cards for Oswald, like I stated already. And he's the one who basically walks out with these palm prints. All right, next slide, please. Same again. And you can see it's a circus with photographers around, and everybody wants to get the pictures in. This is also, a lot of people don't really mention this, but this is unheard of, because find me a situation where the press is 2 feet away from the suspect, the people that investigate, and so forth. They can sit there in that hall, just where, what other situation was anyone allowed to be in that capacity with that many people, microphones, cameras, you name it, only basically to relay the message that he's a cop killer and he shot the president and so forth. Basically, the press are fed continuously lies, bullshit, whatever you want to call it. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is Carl Day again. Next slide, please. And he basically, I think I did this already.
You did that one, yeah.
Next.
You've done that one, yeah.
That's Day again. Next. Yeah, next. And that one next. Oh no, sorry, go on back. So this is where Henry Hurd basically talks about the discrepancy between the two. I have no idea why this is formed, but it's bad. And it says here, like, he pointed out to the FBI man both the area where the print could be seen and the fingerprint dust used to bring it out. Lieutenant Date states that he cautioned Drain to be sure the area was not disturbed while the rifle was. That doesn't make any sense, because the trigger guard was wrapped in cellophane, and that had a smudgy print. And because it had the stock underneath, that's their reasoning. They wouldn't cover that up as such. Right. Now, Drain flatly disputes this, claiming that they never showed him such a print. I just don't believe there was ever a print at Drain. He noted that there was increasing pressure on the Dallas police to build evidence in the case. Asked to explain what might have happened, Agent Drain stated, "All I can figure out is that Oswald's print, was some sort of cushion, because they were getting a lot of heat by Sunday night. You could take the print of Oswald's card and put it on the rifle." Something like that happened. So that brings you close to what happens the day after, on the 25th, yeah, where extra fingerprints are taken. If you read Rudy's HSCA, he's doing his best, and also the video where he's being interviewed, he's doing his best to obfuscate who was actually going in there and doing the job as such. The reason why I don't think it is FBI and Secret Service is because the copies of the fingerprints that they had are all the same set that was handed over to the FBI, and they multi-copied this and handed this over to other internal agencies, Secret Service, other FBI agents. It is the same set. If they had done extra prints, they would have released them. They would have said, like, okay, here we have extra prints of Oswald taken on the 24th or the 25th as such. Yet these prints are nowhere to be seen. Only ones that are to be seen with those trademark things are basically by the DPD, and it has a big stamp on it, says deceased as well. So, you know, Oswald was dead when those prints were taken, and that's the only evidence that's around from prints taken of Oswald by the DPD after he's dead, whereas there's nothing to point towards Secret Service or FBI. Next slide, please. Did I do this? I did all this already. Fuck all that. Yeah. Now, the paraffin test. This is also, let's go to the next slide. This is what hold on. Warren Commission text. Because this is important to read. Slide number 34. Yeah, that one. No, that's the one before that. No, you're on the wrong one. This is all changed. Yeah, this is it. Now, the Warren report states on page 561. In fact, however, the test is completely unreliable in determining either whether a person has recently fired a weapon or whether he has not. So, before we even go there, they already disowned the whole thing right there and then. They go, we cannot determine anything based, it's faulty technology or faulty science. A positive reaction is therefore valueless in determining whether a suspect has recently fired a weapon. Conversely, a person who has recently fired a weapon may not show a positive reaction to the paraffin test, particularly if the weapon was a rifle. A revolver is so constructed that there is a space between the cylinder, which bears the chambers, and the barrel. When a revolver is fired, nitrate-bearing gases escape through this space and may leave residues on the hand. In a rifle, however, there is no gap between the chamber and the barrel, and one would therefore not expect nitrates to be deposited on a person's hands or cheeks as a result of this fire. Can you just go back 3 slides to the first picture? Yeah, one before that. Right, this is, no.
That one? Yeah.
Yeah. This is William P. Barnes. He's a sergeant, and he was responsible for this, for doing the nitrate test. He does the one on Oswald's right cheek on orders of Wilfrid's. Barnes has never, ever, ever done a nitrate test on the cheek of a suspect. So this is the very first time. Fair enough. Give it a go. So they do that, and then next slide, please. As you can see here, this is a tin. That's the tin he holds. And on the right, he holds it again. Next slide, please. And then I saw a picture, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. And I looked in there, and here, this tin's empty. All right, I was just like, okay. I don't want to sound like Johnny the conspiracy theorist here. Yeah, but, you know, I was like, hold on a minute. An empty tin. What? Are you scraping it out, the last bits, or what? So I don't, you know, I just thought that was really peculiar. And the funny bit was these shots, I got all these from by blowing up contact sheets. They're Jim Murray from Black Star. Great photographer. Shot a ton of pictures inside you.
Sorry to stop you, and forgive me if I'm coming up with something completely ridiculous, but that Maxwell House tin looks like it's a coffee tin that has got 2 tins inside it.
Oh no, there are, but the Maxwell House is also. I looked this up. This is paraffin they use.
Maxwell House made paraffin. Okay, I'll just.
pretty bad too.
I do apologise.
You're forgiven only this time. Lucky your name is not Barry, but all right.
I should have kept my jokes too obvious.
So it's not something like conspiracy this, but it was just funny that I just thought, you know what, this guy's got all this empty stuff, and yes, he's got that tin above it there, but underneath it, it's all empty. And if I look on this bit where the mouse is just above it, that looks also like another tin underneath. But anyway, he takes these things, and I couldn't see the paraffin casts because they do this whole dog and pony show in front of it, and they show fingerprints and they show the palm prints. They all take each their own turn, basically, about coming out. So Barnes does this. But after a while, I found out that he actually had the paraffin cast, went upstairs, dropped them off on the 4th floor, then came back downstairs again, and then did the dog and pony show with the others. He just took his tins, basically. Whereas the paraffin casts themselves were already upstairs. Now, that's one thing I'm going to look for, because, of course, if you take those paraffin casts in a bag or whatever it may be upstairs, that's got to be photographed at some point. So that's something I'm still looking for. I'm still looking for any footage in the corridors because it's such a beautiful giveaway of all these individuals in there, all who's walking around, who's doing what, and at what time, and so on. Okay, so the paraffin tests by themselves are pretty interesting because A, they're already useless because of the. Go to the last page, please. And this is. No, one more.
Then it's the
One
last
before
one.
that. It's my bad.
This one, okay.
Okay, so last year I bought a book, and this was on NBC. This was brilliant, this book, because it was a funny book. It was released in the 90s, and it was a transcript of all the reports from NBC reporters while they were either in New York or Washington or in Dallas. And it was brilliant. And then all of a sudden I start reading stuff. And this doesn't make any sense because NBC reports on a paraffin test on Saturday morning at 10:54 in Dallas, where Tom Petit interviews Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry. The results of the paraffin tests are positive, proving that the suspect Lee Harvey Oswald had fired a gun in the last 24 hours. The fingerprints on the rifle were only partial and cannot be identified as Oswald's. Now, from a timing perspective, that's really questionable because the paraffin tests weren't sent to Parkland Hospital until that particular day. And the actual report didn't come back later in the afternoon. It's a 10-page report. And on the very first page of that particular report, it states that it's not positive on his right cheek at all. It is positive on his hands, but not on his cheek. So it is no proof whatsoever of him firing a rifle, which is peculiar, to say the least. But Jesse Curry basically says that it's positive. And you know what? And if you've got everyone lingering around in the hall looking for scraps of news, they'll take it. They'll beam it out. And that's how it works. That's how it goes. And oh yeah, from the time the paraffin casts were delivered in the 3 manila envelopes to DCCCIL at Parkland Hospital by Captain George Dalton and Detective B.G. Brown on November the 23rd. Now, they are not obtained until later the same day. In the 10-page report, it is brought forward that the results are showing nitrate patterns consistent with the subject having discharged a firearm on exhibits 2 and 3. A pattern on exhibit number 3 is typical of the patterns produced in firing revolver. None of these point to Oswald firing a rifle. Now, what's really important as well is that the Dallas Times-Herald on November the 24th claims the paraffin tests show positive results on Oswald's hands and cheek. Once again, it is basically being reprinted. Now, we can go to the neutron activation tests and all that, but I only wanted to look at what November 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, because that's my only area of expertise as such, where I dig in as such. But when I did all this, and when I then look at the fact that there's no Heidel ID on the 22nd, yeah, that his wife doesn't recognize the rifle, and then they arraign him just after the press conference, just when he basically has his shirt taken away and all that, and allegedly they arraign him for murder of the president. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll bet you £100 right now they didn't have one thing to say, we've got something to nail you, because the name Heidel didn't exist on the 22nd. On 7:30 and the next day, they got the order by A. Heidel. But to actually Oswald and the name Heidel wasn't basically concocted until the next day, on the 23rd, is when things are really put together. And you see that all in my book, when things are basically gain more traction in a certain direction as such. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this stuff. It was just a chapter where I thought, well, I need to look into this, and also because it was in relation with the rifle, and I wasn't really bothered about the ownership of it, but like, was he actually, did he have that rifle? Did he buy it? And what can they come up with? A fiber in a bag? Yeah, after all that, what, not a drop of oil? in that whole bag, not one bit of oil, but then they could have easily said, yeah, that oil is the same oil that's in that bag, that's in that rifle. Yeah, and one of the most basic things of seeing if a rifle has been fired as such is pour water through the barrel. And then basically the excess that's inside that barrel will come out as such. That wasn't done either. So there's absolutely nothing that ties Oswald to that rifle. I mean, it all starts the next.
Would the barrel still smell or be warm?
Yeah, you could.
Warm.
Within the hour, not warm, I don't know, but you could smell gunpowder
So when it was first discovered, that should have been a standard test.
right away. And then if you then also look at and then also you pour water through it, you can see whether it has traces of recent firings.
And going back to the nitrate residue on the hands,
Yeah.
is that not the case that you pick it up from handling textbooks?
Well, I was gonna get to that. So the problem is that Oswald's hands were contaminated from the word get-go. Because A, he handles books, and B, he handles boxes. Boxes, all the boxes that they have over there were printed on as well.
Yeah.
Ink contains nitrate, so all it takes is have a little nitrate from that ink as such, and it would have been compromised. The other thing is as well, is that Pete Barnes misspeaks during his Warren Commission testimony and says that they took the nitrate test before the fingerprints. Now, that would also after the fingerprints, whereas it should have been done first. Because after the fingerprints, his hands are covered in ink. Yeah, palm prints, same thing. So if you then start doing a nitrate test, it's compromised from the word get-go. And then he does a better job during the HSCA. And says, no, we did the nitrate test before the fingerprint test and such. And funny thing is in that interview, the funny bit for me that made me just scoff was the fact that JB Hicks, who was also requested to be there to be present for that interview, he'd gone out fishing. So he had no time to be there for that interview as such.
Bart, quick question, couple of points actually,
Oh,
couple of points.
strap in.
Did you know that they refused to sign an affidavit that he lifted handprint from November 22nd? And the reason he done so was because Vincent Train was actually present in the room.
That's the first time I heard this.
Yeah, he refused to sign an affidavit saying that he had lifted the prints on November 22nd.
Where did you get that from?
Got it from Jim's research, and it's also in a book called Hear No Evil, which is a guy who was an investigator for the HSCA, I think. Can't remember the guy.
Oh, I'd love to look into this.
Don Thomas. So
Okay.
yeah, so they refused to do that. Another point is they're talking about the Heidel idea. I kind of dived into a bit of this as well for one of my articles, and you know, you're right. There is no mention of Heidel on the 22nd. The funny thing is, Dallas police try and make out they didn't know who Oswald was this Lee Harvey Oswald or is that James Heidel? Well, in some of the pictures of Oswald, he's wearing an identity bracelet with the name Lee on it. So, and he had to take this identity bracelet off in order to get the paraffin test done. So how could there be any ambiguity over who he was when he's wearing an identity bracelet with his name on it?
The problem with the Ideal idea is that they say that it was part of his cards inside of his wallet.
Yes.
Now, and the cards were laid out in that room 317 in the office next to Fritz's office. Because it's actually one main office, Fritz's office on the right. I forgot his name, is behind it. And then that particular office, all the stuff was laid out. Now, James Hosty, he was present at that first interrogation with Oswald, together with Bookhout, together with Fritz, Boyd, and Sims. After the interrogation, Bookhout goes next door and he grabs a block of blank DPD affidavit paper because the backside of it is blank, right? But in front of it, they're pre-printed affidavit in any fact, and it's all typed out. So he starts taking notes of the content that's out on the table. Now, we do not think that if there were an ID with the same person, same picture, and this different name, That would have been brought up right there and then. A, it's not in the notes. B, nobody asked him about it. Later in the same evening, Manning Clements, who wrote a dodgy report the next day about saying, oh yeah, while I was there yesterday, I saw that ID and I told Bookout about it, blah, blah, blah. When you look at the timing of Clements, who lies about this time, he's there an hour before than he actually says he is. There's no trace of Bookout or mentioning Heidel at all. I mean, you'd think with a find like that, you'd think of how many interrogations did he have? 4 to 5 on that first day? 4 at least. And then you think like, well, that fourth one, they must have brought that up. No, they didn't. They brought it up at the last segment of the interrogation at 11:30 in the morning. And that's because they finally had the Heidel ID of the Heidel order. Because from that point, from Chicago going down to Dallas, phoned it through. And they weren't anywhere close to that. That's when they started building the case. That's when the backyard photo all of a sudden starts to pop up and so forth a few hours later and so forth.
Well, Jerry Hill on the 22nd, I think he was interviewed around 3 in the afternoon, maybe 4. He gave an interview that was televised. He says the suspect's name is Lee Harvey Oswald. We'll mention it like that.
That's another thing. All the arresting officers, Paul Bentley, they made no mention. They are being interviewed in front of the camera the same afternoon and the next day. Not a word about Heidel. Not a word. Doesn't exist. And then when the ID comes out, what does the FBI say? It's fake. Right there and then. It's like fake. And it's also, when you look at the paperwork as such, they first send some things of the ID, his normal ID and so forth. But that so-called ID with that Heidel name isn't there. They have to ask for it and say, send it to us. And then when it comes, the documentation says, nothing's real about this ID whatsoever. Thanks to you, Malcolm.
I think you've got to ask yourself the question, why would Oswald carry an ID, okay, with an alias that linked to a rifle that he just left behind in a crime scene, apparently. There is also no evidence that he ever used the ID prior to November 22nd, right? What would he use it for?
Didn't he use it for the fair play for Cuba?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, I see, because I'm only focusing on the 22nd to the 24th. I really don't give a rat's ass about what happens before or after. Because what I've got in those 3 days is already plenty to dig into as it is. I don't like to get distracted. And the thing is also regarding all that. I know some people have been digging into that regarding the FPCC and that name on it as such. But no, I don't know enough about it to say, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah.
The other thing is, do I recall correctly, there's a photograph possible on the Heidel card?
On that ID was a photograph, yeah.
You don't put photographs on your.
That's another thing, yeah, people say that.
Draft
Yeah,
card.
selective service card does not have a photo on it.
Weird.
No,
I
no,
would be-
if you say weird, then we've got a nice little washing list of basically a mega list of what's all weird. And there's every aspect of this case is weird, so.
Well. There guys, well, I think we need to wrap it up, thank you, Bart.
Thanks God, really.
Couple of things, if anybody hasn't signed the sheet for their lunch choices, please do so. And also one final housekeeping thing, like I told you, tomorrow, you have to check out early. They take your room before we start the event. So we're starting here at 9.
So, 8:30.
So obviously, if you've got your cars, take your license to your cars. Haven't got a car, you might they'll store it in the reception for you.